Ben. Appreciate it. Welcome to our December 13th downtown Rotary meeting. Always a special day when the governor is here, and I'd ask you to join me in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain seating. I'll ask Past President Jason Herbold to come forward and share the invocation.
Thank you, Tony. Welcome, Governor. Let us pray. Lord, we are grateful to you for blessing us with a form of government that grants authority to the states so that our voices and values at a local level can be not only understood, but lived. We are grateful that we have leaders who can listen to us. Lord, please be with our government officials as they weigh the pros and cons of issues that can have a consequential impact on the lives of so many, not only today, but for decades to come. Give them wisdom when considering these issues. Give them a thoughtful ear when listening to the various points of view. Give them the courage to act in a way that would make us proud, no matter the decision. Give them the strength to shoulder both the burden of governing and the criticism that comes with it. Give them the courage to act boldly, even when it is hard. Lord, thank you for bringing us together today in fellowship as we have a discussion with our Governor Kristi Noem and the challenges she and other leaders face when governing our state. We are grateful for her leadership during these extraordinary times. Bless this food to our bodies and bringing us together today. Amen. Well, Tony, before we turn it over to you, I do have to let everybody know it is President Tony's birthday today. And no doubt he is remarkably irritated with me at this very moment. But we are going to sing him happy birthday. Let us begin. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tony. Happy birthday to you.
I would say thank you, Jason, but I don't know that I mean it. I think the bigger thing around the Noor household this week is tomorrow we officially have a teenager, so that's the bigger deal in our household. So pray for us as we navigate the coming years. I want to welcome our guests, many of which are with us today, and welcome our Rotarians. I also want to welcome a couple special guests. We have our District Governor-elect John Schneider and his wife Carol here from Lamar's, Iowa. If you would please stand. John will be leading our district with Rotary in the coming year, and we thank you in advance for your leadership in guiding us forward. Little Rotary business, looking ahead to next week, we have our holiday celebration right here. A week from today, we ask that you invite your significant other. We are going to have lunch, wine, cider, music. And we did also, we are going to have an abbreviated program, but we are going to have Josh Morton from Augustana University come and talk to us about the Midco Arena and as they pursue Division I hockey. We're excited to have him. More than anything, it's a time for us to reflect on the season that we're in and give thanks. So please join us and RSVP so that we can get the right number of meals prepared. I want to give an update to this group on our membership drive in November. We added 7 new downtown Rotarians, which is exciting. We are at 26 from July 1 until now, which is our Rotary year. Our goal is 60, so we are on track with that goal, and want to say thank you to those who invited others in our area and our region to join us on this journey. We are also going to, I did want to share, with regard to membership, we're at 304 active members, which puts us 21st in the world. And I joked. And I said that right, 21st in the world. And Bombay, India is hearing footsteps because we are right on their heels. So thank you for continuing to make this a vibrant experience and for asking other leaders in our community to be part of this. We are going to, real quickly before we turn it over to Scott Lawrence, draw. We had committed to those new, those sponsors that brought in new members that we were going to draw and do a lunch giveaway. We're going to do that right now. Scott Lawrence has agreed to do that drawing so that there's no question on that. We're going to go ahead and do that now. We'll name it, and then you'll get lunch for the rest of the calendar year, or the rest of the Rotary year.
Okay, I was saying it's pretty short-lived, Tony. There you are.
My mother was Dutch, so it come from frugal bunch. We got Jim Schmidt, who sponsored Hugo Barron. Jim, are you with us today?
Must be present to win.
Yeah.
Yes. I guess not. It's only till the end of the year, so.
Yeah, only till the end of the year. So we'll let Jim know. He'll have lunch on us through June of 2022. With that, I'm going to go ahead. She likely needs no introduction, but I am going to provide one anyway before we go ahead and turn this over. Governor Kristi Noem was a wife, a mother, a lifelong rancher, farmer, and small business owner. In 2010, after serving in the South Dakota legislature for 4 years, Noem was elected to serve as South Dakota's lone member of the U.S. House of Representatives, where she served for 8 years. In 2018, with the platform of protecting South Dakotans against tax increases, government growth, federal intrusion, and government secrecy, she was elected as South Dakota's first ever female governor. As South Dakota's 33rd governor, Noem has respected the rights of her people by trusting them to exercise their personal responsibility to make the best decisions for themselves, their loved ones, and in turn, their communities. Above all else, Governor Noem often says that her greatest accomplishment is raising her 3 children, Cassidy, Kennedy, and Booker, along with her husband, Brian. Please join me in thanking moderator Scott Lawrence and welcoming Governor Kristi Noem.
Good job, Scott.
You're welcome. You stay sitting, I get to stand.
Q&A, and that will be from Rotarians only, and we'll have Scott tee that up here towards the end. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. It's a big room, and obviously our guest has drawn quite a bit of interest, the governor, Kristi Noem. We're glad to have her. As a matter of fact, Governor, the last time you were here was August of 2020, which was the first time we came back together as a live group. So it doesn't seem like long ago, but there's a lot of water under the bridge since then, right? A lot of water under the bridge since August 2020. This is a great time to be together. We're coming off a historic budget address. And when I say historic, never have we had the kind of dollars that we have this year, which I've already heard from some legislators saying it's easy to legislate in a year where there's no money. You just say no, but now we've got the money here, so it's going to be an interesting time, and we're going to get into that budget in detail. But coming off that address, first of all, our economy in South Dakota is booming. What would you attribute that to?
Well, I think our economy is #1 in the country right now. I don't know if you guys have seen this kind of growth that we've seen and experienced here in South Dakota for quite some time. I would attribute it to the fact that we've always been a well-run state. We've kept our taxes low, we've kept our regulations low, but then we told our story and invited people to come, and they've really recognized the value of doing business here. So our businesses are doing good, our families are doing well, and that amount of dollars turning over in the economy is generating unprecedented state growth in regards to sales tax. Now, we've all seen federal dollars coming in as well. The federal government's been spending a lot of money. That's impacting our state. But beyond that, the analysis that we've done just within our Bureau of Finance and Management, this growth is unprecedented as far as our economy and the sales tax revenue that's coming in the door.
Okay, so I think we all understand federal dollars have come in, but I think when we were listening to the budget address, I think you mentioned something like 15.7% growth over a record year. Am I correct on that?
Our average growth in revenue in the state of South Dakota is typically 5%. Ours is at 15.75% for 2021. So we've had 3 times the amount of growth in that one budget year. Now, we've already done some projections for the first 4 months of 2022, that budget cycle, and that's 11% over that 15.75% as well. So, you know, I think really capitalizing on the situation we found ourselves in and telling people our story about how wonderful it is to do business here, how wonderful it is to live here, we saw people come and businesses come, and then our businesses here got through the pandemic in a very different way than in many other states, and they've been able to reinvest and to expand as well. So we are seeing historic revenues coming in, and we anticipate that 2022 will continue to see remarkable growth, but we're preparing for the future too, Scott, because we recognize that things on the national landscape are dramatically different, and high inflation costs and all that will eventually start to touch South Dakota.
Just to clarify now, you were here August of 2020, and you just said our growth in that fiscal, that's the 21 fiscal year, correct?
This fiscal year, the last 6 months of 2020 and 21. We're in the fiscal year 2022 right now.
Right.
So for fiscal year 2021, our growth was 15.75%.
And the reason, I'm sorry.
And so far for 2022, we're another 11% above
Over
that.
the 15.7. And the
Yes.
reason that I'm digging into that is because I think it's important to know, we'll discuss federal dollars coming in, but I think it's important to know what being open for business in South Dakota has done for our economy. So that 15.7%, and you mentioned it in your budget address.
You know what's interesting?
Yes.
Is that in my State of the State in 2020, the title of the State of the State address in 2020, if you remember back in January, the title was open for business.
Right.
Which was remarkable because we didn't really realize that we had a full-fledged pandemic on our hands until a couple of months after that.
So that shows that 15.7%, that has equated to the state of South Dakota, to our legislative body, to the work to be done with your budget, how much in revenue, in new revenue. I think it was like $275 million.
Yeah, it's significant. We also have had the opportunity, because of some of the dollars that have come from the federal government, the spending that happened was we offset some of our regular expenses as well and made long-term investments. So there's a component going on. But the fact is people say all the time, well, you're only seeing growth because there's federal money being spent, and that's just not true. We're seeing growth because of our business model as well, and it's a component that we're dealing with when it comes to this next fiscal year.
Right. And I just bring that up because I say, people ask me, you know, what's it like to be in South Dakota, greatest state in the union? So I think that just typifies what all of you and your businesses and things have been going on in that budget year and in the height of the pandemic. So, can you tell us, well, I asked you how well we are doing aside from the federal dollars. We're going to get into that. But okay, let's go into the budget.
Yep.
All right? I had the opportunity to visit with Roger Chase, a legislator who chaired the summer study on housing, okay, workforce housing. I remember Roger saying if we could get $100 million to make a dent in workforce housing, he said we'd be really, really fired up. Okay, well, you've got a number for workforce housing. Tell us your number and tell us how you see it working.
Well, I want to give you a little background on budget and the priorities that I rolled out
Yes,
as well.
that's
Is
fine.
that okay?
That's fine.
We typically in the state put 10% into reserves every year. 10% of our budget we try to put into reserves just to get ready for a rainy day. It's easier to have money in savings than it is to go back and make cuts to government in difficult times. So last year we went above and beyond that and put 12% into savings. This year, I asked the legislature in my budget to put 14% of our budget into savings for a couple of different reasons, but know that when that revenue came in, that was the first priority, was to make sure that we were putting dollars into savings right off the top. And then going forward, identifying problems that we were dealing with or challenges that we have in the state of South Dakota and using this opportunity to make a long-term difference. We all know that every community in the state of South Dakota is struggling with housing. And I think it's only gotten a little worse because of the amount of people that we've seen moving into the state. And it can be in Sioux Falls, there's challenges, but also in Lemon, South Dakota, there's challenges, or Britain, or Murdo. There's literally families moving to every single community in the state right now, which our small towns love because they've been wanting to grow, put kids in their schools to sustain them, and get businesses back on Main Street. So we're seeing some really remarkable things happen across the state of South Dakota. But our goal was to make sure that we're making a difference in addressing the housing crunch that we're seeing, but not have government be the answer and be, in the providing it for themselves and creating a new program that needed to be sustained forever. So what we're doing is grants. I proposed using $150 million of state dollars right off the top, partnering that with $50 million of federal dollars that we have access to, and that makes $200 million that will be prioritized towards housing for the state. But also we'll run this much like a grant program we already have for housing projects in the state of South Dakota, where it partners with communities, and then it also partners with developers. So our $200 million will be matched with $200 million from communities and then $200 million from developers. We'll have over $600 million worth of investment in housing projects across the state of South Dakota. So we have it's going to make a remarkable difference.
So, yeah, go ahead.
And that match from the state
Yeah.
will make it so that developers want to be in these towns. That makes it cash flow enough that they can do these projects, where before maybe they didn't want to go into Brookings and do multifamily housing because they couldn't make it really cash flow, just to do 6 or 8 units or 14. Now they'll be able to, because they have that third of the dollars that will be granted towards it. The community will have skin in the game because they'll have to contribute and match the grant, but then the developer will as well, and there'll be enough incentive for everybody to partner in it a way that they haven't before. And remember this, that counties and cities received money directly from the federal government too. Because we've had some questions on people
right.
saying, well, what if our county needs some housing but they don't have any money? Well, they did receive some of this federal dollar directly to them. So we do know that they have revenues available. If they choose to prioritize housing, then we'd like to help them solve that problem.
That was the question I was going to get at. How do we know that there's 200 from developers and 200 from cities? Well, okay, so you answered that question. Clarification on the 200, $50 million is coming from federal dollars.
It's federal dollars that's coming to the state that have certain strings attached to it.
Okay.
And that's the one thing everybody needs to remember. It's not like the federal government decided to go crazy, spend a bunch of money, and just hand it to states and say, spend it on whatever you think. There's Treasury guidance that comes out that tells us specifically how it has to be spent, and then we have the opportunity in the future to get audited on it. So, and it is the state of South Dakota that will get audited and be liable for it. So we need to make sure we're spending it appropriately, and there's $50 million that we can use for housing that fits this program, which is it's the LIP program, which many communities have participated in before, but it allows us to invest in that local infrastructure.
Well, that's, workforce housing has been a big topic across the state, and it doesn't matter, like you said, if it's Sioux Falls or Rapid City or Pierre or DeSchmidt or Lemon, wherever, it's there. And
well, and some people think it's low-income housing, and it's not. The target is going to be workforce housing. So it's individuals that are, looking for a house that's $150,000 to $250,000, that there's just not that on the market today. So that's where those families, we have one of the highest rates of working moms in the country in South Dakota. So in South Dakota, both spouses tend to work, and that's the house that we're feeling a crunch on, that they just can't afford still, and we'd like to get them into a home and figure out a way to answer those challenges at the community level.
okay, so we talked about housing, and you mentioned working mothers. All right, I would like to dig into a little bit. There's some money in your budget that specifically addresses workforce, I think, including $100 million for daycare and some other additional training at tech schools and other things. Would you care to expand on how you see that fitting the workforce piece of this budget together?
We have in the state right now about 800 people on unemployment in the entire state, which is kind of remarkable, isn't it? But we have 28,000 open jobs. So workforce challenges are incredible. And getting people into the workforce that maybe have been out or back into the workforce or into a career that we have an open job for, that we need people for, is really important. And that's one of the priorities that I have had for a couple of years, but we've discussed extensively with the legislators addressing as well. And childcare and daycare is one of the big puzzle pieces. There's a lot of different opinions about childcare in the state of South Dakota. There's people who don't think the government should have any role at all. The government shouldn't be raising our children, and I would agree with that. The government shouldn't be raising our children. We ideally would have families doing that, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a safe place for kids to go while their parents go pursue their career and their job. And there were different proposals that came forward. What I'm asking the legislature to do is take this $100 million that we've got in our social services department and to use that as grants to build daycare facilities. Use it as grants to expand child care facilities. Maybe even those existing providers that are out there, you know, they're required to have sprinkler systems. They're required to have different upgrades and equipment in order to be registered. What could we do to help make that affordable so they don't have to pass that cost on to the parents who are paying an hourly rate or a weekly rate to have their child be taken care of? So that's what we will use that $100 million for, is to do grants to help build those facilities. We've had quite a few employers reach out to us as well that want to build their own child care facilities right in their workplace. That's fantastic, because that provides a quality of life for the parents too, who have that convenience.
Right.
If we can help partner with them and help them build it, and then they'll make sure that that resource is there for those families, that's the best way and the long-term solution to do it. There's been some proposals on us subsidizing per hour every child that's in daycare, but we don't want to get in that situation, and we don't want to do that long-term because the costs are unpredictable. It is the government paying for a new program and a new payment that we're committed to far into the future. These grants are going to be a great opportunity to get employers, businesses, invested in making sure that their workforce has the proper child care that they need. I'll just tell you one story out of Deadwood. Deadwood did a model kind of like this, where, you know, they have obviously facilities that are open 24 hours a day. And they had quite a few of their folks that were working in Deadwood whose kids were sleeping in their cars at night while they worked their shift because they didn't have anywhere to take them until 2 in the morning. And that whole community came together and put together a facility to care for those children for those longer hours. But they would have loved to have had somebody come alongside them and just say, help us cover the cost of building the building. So we can have kids in a better situation. We can have parents feeling much more comfortable with where their kids are while they go and earn their wage, and then also make sure that it's affordable for everybody too.
So as this might roll out, if it gets done in the legislature and goes through, where would that money, is this federal money or state money?
This is federal money that has already come to the Department of Social Services. So
okay.
we have already committed and targeted those dollars to that child care grant program.
Okay. And I guess I would always, being a marketer, I would always encourage that we communicate what's available.
Right.
Social Services, Department of Labor, there's a lot of stuff there that's come in a lot of great programs. So this could potentially be another one. Let's expand on more workforce, more
But
things you're thinking about. Yes.
The priority is always going to be some of this money that came from the federal government. I mean, the vast majority of it is one-time money. So we can't use one-time money, or we shouldn't. I don't think it'd be responsible to use one-time money to set up ongoing programs that we're always financially committed to. So that's the viewpoint that I look through everything. If it's a one-time amount of money that we have that we can't count in the future, what should we invest that in to meet some of the challenges that we haven't been able to address for the last couple of decades?
Absolutely. So what other workforce initiatives were in your budget?
Well, we've got the housing program. We've also got some water projects that we're putting in. There's several areas of the state that can't be developed, that people can't necessarily move to or build a business in because they don't have enough water supply. So that's a separate amount of dollars that will flow through the Department of Ag and Natural Resources. That's more money. That's $600 million plus that will be available for water projects to different parts beyond the housing initiative that we're going to be doing.
So what's give me an example of a water project.
Well, there's a big one they're talking about proposing up in Aberdeen. It would take water from the Missouri River to Aberdeen because Aberdeen can't grow anymore. They simply don't have the water supply to build new businesses, to add more housing. That whole region of the state they kind of call a bit of a water desert because what they can do there for water infrastructure just isn't possible. There's another big project that's being talked about going West River and taking water west as well. But a lot of these towns and communities and counties, they'll put all new storm sewers in their city. You know, they may have the city of, you know, Gregory or Florence might have their entire, you know, plumbing sewer system in the town be very damaged, old, need to be replaced. This is something that they can apply for a grant to go and get that upgraded and repaired so they don't have to raise taxes on the local individuals to get it done.
Another big item in your budget that I think is worth discussing is a 6% raise for state workers, for education, and for healthcare workers. Talk to us about that. I've seen some head nods. That's fantastic. I've seen comments, it's not enough. You know, talk to us about that 6% raise.
Well, you all are probably familiar with this debate. It's an increase every year that gets debated between providing increases to healthcare providers, to education, which is the state aid formula, and then also state employees. And typically that's done at the inflationary rate. But you know, it is a requirement this year. If we would have followed statute and not made any adjustments at all, the increase to those three, to state employees, to providers, and to education would have been 3%. Instead, in my budget, I put it at 6%, which 6% is unprecedented. I don't recall an increase that's, in fact, it's the largest increase to education since the half-penny sales tax was passed. And the reason for doing that is because of how we're not keeping pace with salaries in those areas and addressing some of our workforce needs and challenges that we have for delivering health care, taking care of people. Also, the workforce in our schools has been incredibly challenged in our ability to get teachers, but also school aides, staff, support staff that happens. And then within state employees, we've got hundreds of open positions in areas that we have to fill just to provide public safety. For instance, my Department of Corrections, I can't recruit correctional officers right here in Sioux Falls to work at the penitentiary when the county's paying $5 more an hour. You know, they'd rather go work for the county, obviously, because it's better for their families. So to stay competitive with the industry, we have to make changes and adjustments to salary policy, and that'll be very helpful.
Well, I can certainly say it would be nice if we weren't always compared or mentioned as the lowest paid teachers in the nation. And I think we need to keep working to get that up. They're hard workers and they're dedicated, just like our healthcare workers. And
they are, and I think it's important to know that the 6% is incredibly significant. It is historic, and that also I don't get to dictate teacher salary policy, that school boards do and administrators do. And you probably heard me talk about it if you listened to any of the budget address, that I believe that increase should go into salary policy. Because that 6% is ongoing funding that the state is committing to that state aid formula. And it will make a big difference if it is all plugged into salaries.
It will, because it's not one time. Okay.
The other thing I would just mention on Department of Corrections, because you probably have read quite a bit about Department of Corrections in the news the last 6 months, and we've got some real challenges there. We did a study on facilities, and we need $600 million worth of prisons in the state of South Dakota to replace what we need to really keep people safe, to be ADA compliant, to make sure that we're meeting the requirements that are in place from the federal government standards. And so we're starting to address that, in that I, in my budget, included a women's facility out in Rapid City that would be a workforce training facility. A lot of our women that are in prison are moms, and they're all a very long way away from their kids. They also aren't getting much for workforce training because they're so overcrowded in the facility in Pierre. and they're not getting much for addiction treatment or counseling. Over 80% of the women that are in our prison system are there for addiction issues, and over 60% are there just from possession. And so we would like to get them the tools that they need, that they can come out of prison and really be able to go back to a wonderful life where they can provide for their families, be good mothers. And we'll have the ability to do that if we make that investment out in Rapid City and that workforce training center. And then also, we're putting an extra $82 million into reserves. I told the legislators I would like them to keep that there until we can get enough that we can build enough to build new facilities. That $600 million is a significant cost to the state. We don't have that right now.
Right.
So we should be saving for that, knowing it has to be addressed.
Yeah, I believe it was $28 million to the women's prison facility in Rapid City,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
And then there were proposals for set aside for men's prisons, start setting aside dollars now. I think something that is quite relevant to all of us in this room would be $30 million going to Dakota State University.
Yeah, it is.
Cybersecurity, talk to us about that.
Well, we all know that Dakota State is the top education facility for cybersecurity training. And what it can provide to South Dakota, not just by training those individuals, but how it recruits those industries around it and DoD contractors, and the industry tends to go where its workforce is trained. It just does. So what we would like to do is partner. Dr. Griffiths has secured donations to partner to build an expansion location here in Sioux Falls to where we can expand that program, train more of that workforce here in South Dakota, recruit the industries around it that really truly want to co-locate, and then it builds our economy, creates the type of careers that our kids want to go to, and keeps them right here close to home. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us, and we are really, I'm not too proud to say it, we are really taking advantage of Dr. Griffiths, because she's got a fantastic reputation across the world for being a leader in cybersecurity and what it takes to really train individuals that are ready to secure this nation and to secure infrastructure and personal data. We are known for that, and while we're known for that, we should be expanding our footprint so that it truly does create those high-paying jobs right here at home. And you know, these are jobs, and this is an industry that doesn't overwhelm our highways. It doesn't, you know, overwhelm our transportation sectors. It really is a different area where we are getting these high-paying careers into South Dakota that doesn't overload our infrastructure, that still provides that career path for our kids that want to stay here.
Well, I think one of the key things is, I think in Sioux Falls, I might be wrong, but I think I heard there's like 800 cyber and cybersecurity jobs available and open right now. And for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to meet President Griffiths, you should. But you just got to tell her to kind of explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because otherwise she's going to be up here. I said, okay, let's just bring her down a notch here, President Griffiths.
It's almost as bad as going out to the Sanford lab and they start talking about neutrinos and dark matter, and you're, I totally got everything you were telling me.
Yeah. It's a 600 level class.
Yeah. The one thing I'm doing on workforce, though, Scott, I should just mention, is in my budget I put $35 million into tourism. But we saw what telling our story did for marketing our state, and that it did sustain our businesses and help us grow. But the $35 million into tourism, we're going to specifically target agritourism. For the first time in history in this country, when people search where they want to go on vacation, their number 1 and number 2 searches are rural America and small towns. So our farmers and ranchers and people who love our way of life have an opportunity to showcase what we have, and so we need to let the rest of the country know that we're here. So we'll be promoting agritourism. We'll also be spending dollars to promote the tourism opportunities with our Native American tribes. We have quite a few of the tribes that have brought us proposals to make sure they're able to tell their story and share their culture with people across the world, and we're going to help them do that with that partnership. And then different communities that want to partner on a marketing program will be doing that as well, and then some of that $35 million will be used on workforce recruitment. So you saw and probably have heard about the law enforcement recruitment campaign that we did for 1 week, recruiting law enforcement officers from across the country to move to South Dakota. In 1 week, we had 900 officers from 41 states say, we want to come to South Dakota and be here and live here where we're respected. So we also did that. Now you've seen the partnership with Sanford and Avera on recruiting nurses.
And Monument.
Yep, we're going to, and Monument as well. We're going to continue to do that in different areas where we need to target a specific demographic to come to South Dakota and fill the jobs that we need.
You know, I think just one point back to the cybersecurity and the opportunities to expand and grow those people. I would tell you the cybersecurity industry loves our kids.
Yeah.
They love our kids because they can pass the character evaluation and they don't have a record. And you got to have all, I'm serious.
Well, and they have a work ethic too.
They have a work ethic.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, again, be proud of the kids you're raising here in South Dakota because we got some of the best. But we have to do everything that we can to keep them here.
I have never heard anybody say, be proud of your kids because they can pass a background check.
Well,
That's awesome. That's the world we live in.
again, I'm a marketer.
Yeah,
All right,
there we
well,
go.
whatever. All right. Okay, so as far as the budget's concerned, before we go down a little bit different path here, as far as the budget is concerned, did we miss something that you want to talk about?
Oh, you know, I told the legislators I wasn't going to overwhelm them
Right.
with every single detail.
Okay.
They would have been there for a couple hours. I won't do that to you
Okay.
as well. But it is all available and it's all online, and it's something that will be heavily debated during legislative session as well. We're putting $10 million into Custer State Park, hopefully,
Right.
to expand camping and reservations there. That'll be a great investment for us because tourism is our second largest industry. We've got a couple of dams that we'll be fixing in the state. We did some of that last year, but we've had quite a bit of damage in 2019 from the flooding, so we're doing those types of investments as well. Whatever we can do in an area that needed to be addressed for a long period of time that we can make a big difference for the next 30, 40 years is what the priority is.
Fantastic. Now, I heard you mention we had like what, how many police officers? I'm looking for quantifiable things, okay? You mentioned that.
We've received now, I think, over 3,500 applications.
Okay, and I
for
know
law
some of them
enforcement,
have
yeah.
been sworn in, but what other numbers can you quantify in terms of, you're putting $35 million into recruitment and tourism and those kind of things. Can you quantify the tourism year that we had in the fiscal 21?
Well, all I can tell you is we set records on the amount of visitation, and we set records on the amount of hunting licenses sold, fishing licenses sold. You know, as far as actual revenue brought in, I'll let Jim do that. He's got his tourism convention coming up, and he always likes to unveil the impact that tourism has on the state of South Dakota, but it has been really remarkable. And some of what we're doing then is capitalizing on that sales tax revenue that came in. We're investing, you asked about technical schools earlier.
Right.
17 million into our technical schools, but we're also going to address long-term needs that are necessary for our first responders. You know, they have, you know, life packs that they use to save lives with every day that are 10 years old that the software systems are obsolete, and we're going to replace those for them. We're going to put telehealth capabilities in all of the ambulances across the state of South Dakota. So as soon as that individual's in the ambulance and they need to get connected to a doctor to work on them while they get to the hospital, they can do that. And we're going to invest in training for them and then try to recruit. You guys don't know how much we're struggling with volunteer EMS professionals across the state, volunteer firefighters. There's a real shortage. In fact, there's one part of the state, just in hearing the different stories on the people that don't step up and volunteer anymore, it's incredibly challenging. We've got one area that covers hundreds of miles that has two people that run the ambulance service, and it's a dad and his daughter. The dad is in his 80s and on oxygen. He drives, and she's in the back taking care of people. And they can't get anybody else to help volunteer to run that ambulance with them. So we're going to spend some time really educating people about what we can do to facilitate them really serving their communities in this way, get them training and get them the equipment that they need and get them comfortable with doing these kind of life-saving activities we just need across the state. And we want to put in regional crisis care centers. Rapid City did this last year. You know, our law enforcement and our emergency rooms tend to end up with people that are in a mental health crisis. And that's not really the appropriate way to treat those individuals that are in that situation. We'd much rather have them be with people that can really, truly cope with the situation and help them get on the right path sooner rather than later, which happens when they end up with law enforcement. So these regional facilities like that will do a wonderful bit of work for those individuals that are in those types of situations.
One last question on the budget, and then if there's questions out there, certainly you can take them. But how many? What do we expect for new FTEs with this expansion, federal dollars, and the programs we're putting in?
Well, there's no expansion. In fact, we're cutting 40 full-time employees out of the state. So as what we've done is invest in ways to become much more efficient and ways that we can deliver services in a much more streamlined manner. And so as people have been retiring, we've been making those efficiencies standard in different agencies and departments. So in this budget that I'm proposing, we actually have 40 less state employees.
We've heard a lot. We've all heard a lot. Curriculum, social studies, and what the Department of Education is working on. I believe we're re-racking that process now,
Well,
or adjusting it. Would you please tell us where that's at?
There's standards that get reevaluated every 7 years. We're in the middle of that right now. We have a commission set up that will set the standards specifically for history and for civics in the state of South Dakota. So that's for our K-12 system. And what that commission will do is make sure that it's interpreting and that our kids are learning just a true history. They'll read the Declaration of Independence. They'll read the Constitution, that the content matches up with what the history of this country is. So that'll be, that commission will be setting those standards and looking at that content, and then that's what goes out to your different school districts on what they can use in their classrooms to educate our kids. There's been a lot of discussion nationally about action civics and critical race theory. You know, we'll be bringing legislation to make sure that's not taught in South Dakota, but these standards as well, just in addressing history, will make sure that our kids really are growing up with the background of what has made America so special for so many years, and they'll know really the founders' true stories, their flaws, and their character that they led this country with, and led us through challenging times.
So I would assume in that curriculum, as we look at it, we'll make sure that we have our accurate native.
Well, we're not going to. It is absolutely. We're not going to dictate curriculum.
Okay.
The state doesn't do that, but we do set standards, and then there's content as well that's addressed. But curriculum is actually a decision that's made at the district level. And in regards to South Dakota history and our Native American culture as well, that will definitely be included. Right now in our standards, Native American culture is only mentioned 6 times. What we had proposed and what was in the process was 28 times, so increasing that dramatically. But now this commission will formalize that process, and there'll be individuals on this commission that are Native Americans that will offer their insight and wisdom to that process.
I know you've had some criticism of certain media outlets.
Just a little.
Yeah. But if what are they getting wrong, and about you and your administration that you would like to talk about today?
Well, you know, I guess quite a few things. It's
Okay.
this has very much been an attack on me, the administration, the state of South Dakota, and my family. For instance, on my daughter Cassidy with her appraiser license, there's been a continual narrative that I did something to help her get licensed, which is absolutely false. And they kept it up and kept the narrative going until they completely destroyed her business. So she has, in fact, they were going after personal documents that the state has on licensing of hers that they wanted released, saying that because we wouldn't release them, we were covering something up. That's not true. It's just that if I would have released Cassidy's personal information, I would have had to release every appraiser's licensing information, or every real estate broker, or every law exam that a lawyer would take. Whatever your personal evaluations or exams that anybody in the state of South Dakota had to go through to get their license, then that would be an open book to everybody else. And the precedent it would have set would have exposed tens of thousands of South Dakotans to their personal information being shared with the world. And that wasn't something I was willing to do, so they tried to spin that into that I was favoring her. That's why she turned in her license and released it all herself, and 100% proved that she never received special treatment. And did you ever see that covered in the press? Not at all. So those documents 100% proved that she went through the same process that other people did, had no special treatment, but yet they completely destroyed her business and ended her career. It's the same thing with budgets and spending and other criticisms, that it just keeps going one after the other. It's hard for me to remember all of them, but one thing I would say to you is that the Democrat National Party has flooded the state of South Dakota with Freedom of Information Act requests. So they are right now covering us up in FOIA requests that we respond to, just looking for something that they could turn to attack and to come after me. And I think I'll be candid with you. I believe the reason it's happening is that they want to take me out. But they also, in South Dakota, we proved that our way of life works. I mean, we govern pretty conservatively here fiscally. We don't have high taxes. We don't have high regulations. We let people make personal decisions, have personal responsibility, and trusted them. And it worked. We as far as, we taking care of people, but also making sure that our economy is doing well. We have the best healthcare systems, I think, in the world here. And during the pandemic, our mental health challenges went down, our suicides went down. We were one of the only states that our drug overdoses went down. And so it is a specific focus on me and my administration, but we are prepared for it, and we'll keep telling the truth. I would just hope that our press would do that once in a while as well.
What about anything on the state airplane thing? They were digging into state airplane use?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it's going to is appropriation. Somebody's looking at it, or
They
government
are,
audit?
and the one thing that people, the one thing you all should know is I've used the state airplane exactly like every other governor has. Never for any trip other than every other governor has. Always legal, never for personal business, never for political business, but that's the narrative that people hear all the time about the state airplane. So nothing that we have ever used the state airplane for has been any different than what it was done in the past, and all has been completely legal and applied to, which is the way I do everything.
Well, it's not as if South Dakota is some flyover state sitting in the middle of the country that other people don't know about anymore. I think we've become more of our policies and procedures put us on the radar screen. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys saw this story, guys and gals saw this story, but they had a dash for cash at the Stampede game on Saturday night. And the Washington Post and Twitter took to us to say how vile teachers having to crawl on the mat in South Dakota for money. And I just thought, come on. Come on. So it's, they're watching us. There's no question.
Well, and that's going viral nationwide,
Right.
that we don't pay our teachers anything so much that they have to. And we just did an unprecedented request for funding for teacher salaries. But also it's the support staff in these schools that need some adjustment as well, too.
Absolutely.
So and we also have to remember we've got a lot of folks here in South Dakota that want the truth. They deserve the truth. I had a reporter actually say to us in response when we said, your story's completely wrong. We gave him all the facts back to it and told him what the truth was and asked him to reprint it and to correct his story, and he said that wasn't newsworthy. So he literally said the truth wasn't newsworthy, that he wasn't going to go back and correct it. And so it's definitely being used as a tool. I think we have to hold them accountable.
I just have one more question, and I know there's some folks who might have a couple of questions for you, Governor. But you're a grandmother now.
I am. Have you seen her?
Oh, yeah. You're a
Sorry.
grandmother now. So where is the Christmas going to find the Noem family this year?
Well, we're going to be up at the ranch by Watertown this year. And the reason we're going to be up there is Brian's parents are building a new house. And if you know my husband at all, he's extremely nostalgic and just is brokenhearted that this is the last Christmas at his mom and dad's house, which is by Lake Norden and Bryant. So We are going to go there and spend as much time as possible. They're literally moving, the new house is less than a mile away. And his cousin's moving into the old house, but this is the last Christmas in this house, and it's gonna be very special, so we're all gonna be there and be sad together.
Well, I'm certain you will have a Merry Christmas and with your granddaughter
Oh.
and at the house.
Yeah,
so it'll be
Addie
great.
is 5 months old now, and I'll put a picture on Instagram today if you all want to see an
Please
update
do,
of her. Yeah,
please do.
she's-
We've been following.
she's perfect,
So
yeah.
yeah. You also had kind of a big birthday recently.
Oh,
too.
yeah, I turned 50,
Yeah.
so thank you for pointing that out.
Well, I can't wait till I turn 50.
Great. That's right.
I can finally grow up a little bit, right? So, yeah. All right. Thank you for putting up with me for the last 45 minutes. But now I'd like to open up the floor for questions. Rotarians, please, not guests. So I think we've got a couple of mics floating around. So, Governor, if you wouldn't mind, I think
Sure.
we've got
I'd love it.
a few minutes for some questions. Questions?
Thank you so much for coming to speak to us. And I think this thing about cybersecurity is great. And I think it's great that we're training up some of our young people. But are we going to do any types of incentives for cybersecurity or any other professions to get them to stay in South Dakota? I know you're trying to bring jobs here, but you know, like sometimes in the medical field, they'll say, we'll pay a year of college if you stay here a year. Are you planning to do anything like that with any of that money?
Well, there's not a discussion right now specific to that industry on doing scholarships, although we did do the Freedom Scholarship last year, which was a low-income scholarship for those individuals looking for higher education opportunities. That had been talked about for many years and was accomplished during last legislative session. I would say that recruiting those types of businesses is incredibly important to South Dakota, so those kids stay here. We do have some of those businesses here, and they're expanding, so that opens up new career opportunities, but recruiting those businesses and telling them the story of what we have as a treasure in Dakota State and Dr. Griffiths, I think is the testimony that you should come here. Once they do that, they hear about what we have in an asset, then you tell them about our business environment, our low tax structure and our low regulatory structure, and the need we all have for cybersecurity today. The amount of personal information that we have out there that's in our utility companies, it's in our banking systems, but even as the state of South Dakota, what we hold for personal information for individuals who apply for licenses and fees, what the city holds, all of us need
Medicine, ag,
all of it. All of our businesses we interact with are holding our personal information, and they now, and in this day and age, have a requirement to have people on staff that can make sure that information is always secure as well.
Good question. Thank you. Another question.
Thank you, Governor, for appearing before us today and filling us in on so many of the exciting things going on in South Dakota, and the numbers are just fantastic. You touched a little bit on educational curriculum and some of that and how that's decided. Of course, the last year and a half has seen rise of nonsense like critical race theory and things like that. One of the things I think that's helped South Dakota be awesome is that we've kept a lot of that kind of really what I guess I'd call radical stuff out. I'm just curious, I know you have spoken out against that, and I just am curious from a state standpoint what can be done or is being done to keep that out.
Well,
Thank you.
I have an executive order in place right now that prevents critical race theory and action civics from being taught in the state of South Dakota. The legislature will have a chance to, we're bringing a bill as well, so they'll have the debate and decide if they want to support putting that in statute, so it's a long-term fix. Because executive orders only last as long as I'm there, but a statute is in law then, and it just ensures that we're not going to have that kind of racism taught in our schools. Yep. Yes,
Another
sir.
question. Mike.
Governor, you're proposing a 6% increase for medical payment in South Dakota, and I imagine most of that or all of it will go to Medicaid. Is that correct?
Well, it'll go to providers, which, you know, a lot of those folks that are out there providing care for individuals. It may be for nursing homes, assisted livings, different individuals that are helping with those that have medical needs, but also some of the case type workers that we have interacting with individuals and families.
Yeah, that was nursing homes was my main concern about, you know, getting in some increased funding for nursing homes, because I think we're really in trouble, you know, statewide when it comes to that part of healthcare.
Yeah, there's a real need for us in this state to have those facilities and make sure that we're partnering with them to provide the care and that we're doing due diligence. But they did receive an increase last year as well, and we specifically addressed some shortfalls in where that formula was landing, but this year they will see a 6% as well, if the legislature agrees. What happens is I propose my budget, and then that's what they go and Jack's laughing. Jack is like, it gets, you know, that's what they debate all legislative session, is if they have different priorities. So if you care about one of these areas that you're passionate about, I'd encourage you all to talk to your legislators because they're the ones who will end up presenting a final budget to me that I decide I can sign or not sign. And that's really where a lot of the discussion will happen.
We have several in the audience today.
Yeah,
So
so
I see
Jack
Jack,
is
Doug
here,
is
and Doug,
here.
and who else
Kent?
did I see? Kent's right here.
Who are we missing?
Can the legislators stand up
Yeah,
for a
please.
second?
If you're in the
Yeah,
legislature,
they're like,
please stand up.
no. Yeah,
Come on. Yeah, let's
there
hear
we
it
go.
for 'em.
Yes, good.
They have got their work cut out for them this year, right? Okay, it's going to be quite a session. We got time for one more question.
Jennifer is my name. I rode home on Minnesota Avenue Saturday afternoon after taking my kids to see Santa Claus.
Oh, good.
Saw in the back of a pickup truck a visible symbol of Nazi propaganda in our community. I appreciated very much your remarks at the vigil a couple of weeks ago. How do we combat that kind of hate in our communities?
You know, we love people. That's what I think is kind of amazing is we don't see that very often in the state of South Dakota. And that's one of the things that makes me proud for being here. So, you know, as much as we can work together and show that we have the ability to live together and embrace our differences, but still know that we might disagree on a few things, but that we recognize that we're all created equal and that that is a right given to us by our Creator. I think that that type of, you know, symbolism, you know, should not be showing up in our state. That's what I think is remarkable, is you don't see that in South Dakota very often, or at least I don't, and I'm very proud of that fact. We didn't see the riots and the violence and a lot of things that other states were experiencing too, and that's what I tell people, no matter where they're from, when they talk about the difference in South Dakota, is that when we talked about trusting people, we got good people. You know, we all make responsible decisions, know how to take care of our neighbors. Our folks recognize the importance of serving others. That's why we were created. So that's pretty special in South Dakota. And the people that have moved here in the last 6 months to a year, it's dramatically changed their lives. And they said, we never thought we'd end up in South Dakota, but look at how much our kids are in the classroom, they're learning. I have a job I love, I have neighbors who I talk to. It's a really wonderful thing.
We just need to keep working at it.
We do,
Right.
we do.
Well, we're up to time. So I think let's thank Governor Noem for her time today.
Thank you, Scott.
A lot of that applause is for having to put up with me.
No,
So I appreciate
you were
that.
great.
I'd say 90% of it is.
Yes, yes,
We're going to
yes,
give the
we're
governor a final moment to share some thoughts. So I'd ask that you remain seated. She has another event that she needs to get to. And we're going to allow her and her team to move on to that event. But thank you again for being here, Governor, and sharing your time with us. And a great question by Jen. And I think pointing back to the four-way test will be beneficial to all involved and will build goodwill. And I appreciate that answer from our governor. So thanks again. And Governor, if you want to share a few
Yeah,
thoughts
no.
before we let you
Just
on your way.
thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. And if you need anything, just let us know. We'll follow up, and Scott's got my cell phone number, so he'll make sure I answer all the questions. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas, everybody.
All right, I'm done.
You heard it here. Contact Scott Lawrence if you have any any issues with state government that you believe need to be addressed. And someone must have texted Jim Schmidt, or he heard free lunch was in order, so he is here now. We got free lunch for you, Jim, through the end of the fiscal year. So thank you for bringing on Hugo as a new member. Looking ahead to next week, we'll have our holiday celebration. Please RSVP. We're excited to see you and your significant other back at that time. We will not meet the 27th of December or January 3rd, so we will have a holiday break, but look forward to seeing you back here next week. With that, Rotary is adjourned. Have a great week.